I, I love my committee. We have a quorum already. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Quirk?
Here.
Melendez? Here. Gonzalez? Present. Jones Sawyer? Present. Lackey? Lowe? Santiago?
Yes, thank you very much. This makes our business much easier. I really appreciate your help. The next item is AB 1134, item number 25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'll begin as witnesses show up. AB 1134 is about symmetry, really, and currently when issuing concealed carry weapons permits, generally it is the county sheriffs that do that, and in some instances potentially a police chief in a city. And if there is an arrangement or a situation where a police chief wants to be able to, because they have better understanding of their community than the sheriff, what 1134 would allow would be the sheriff and the police chief to enter into agreement, this is a voluntary bill, to allow then the police chief to be issuing CCW permits instead of the sheriff in that case. This comes in following a case that came out of Southern California, the LA area, where the courts didn't quite seem to understand that relationship and turned it around when the county sheriff was trying to allow, I believe it was the city of Los Angeles, police chief to be able to issue CCW permits. So again, this is voluntary. It allows that relationship to be developed between the county sheriff and a particular city police chief. It's fairly straightforward. The Sheriff's Association brought this to me and asked me to carry this bill, which I'm very happy to do to provide some clarity in this area. And with that, I have a couple of witnesses in support and respectfully ask for your aye votes.
All right, 2 witnesses, 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Aaron McGuire on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. We are the sponsors of this legislation and co-sponsoring along with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. This comes out of an issue about the authority of the sheriff to basically ask that an applicant go to their police chief first in the city that they reside and seek that CCW permit from them. The intent of this legislation is not to limit the availability of CCW permits. It's simply a mechanism to allow which agency might be in a better posture to make those determinations of good moral character. And with that, we ask for your aye vote.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Lieutenant Wayne Billow, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. For the above stated reasons, we support the bill and urge your support. Thank you.
Very good. Other witnesses in support, name, organization, and position.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Sean Rundle with the California Peace Officers Association in support.
Okay. Any other witnesses in support? Then witnesses in opposition. Yes, please have a seat, and you have 2 minutes.
Mr. Chair, members, Craig DeLuz with the Firearms Policy Coalition, the California Association of Federal Firearms Licensees. AB 1134 basically overturns 40 years of precedent. This precedent is that sheriffs have the ministerial responsibility, duty, in fact, to administer the CCW or the concealed weapons carry process. The court case that was referenced wasn't a case where they didn't get it. What they understood was that this ministerial responsibility was there for the sheriffs because they are duly elected by the people. In fact, what it stated was that they cannot abdicate that duty. It also stated that applicants could not be required to jump through additional unnecessary hoops, as was the case in this particular case where you had to be turned down by your local municipality before you could go to the sheriff's office to apply. The fact is the reason why this is in the hands of our sheriffs is because they are elected and thus duly responsible or specifically to the people. What this does is it takes it out of their hands. They abdicate that responsibility and send it to, for all due respect, to an appointed bureaucrat who is not necessarily duly elected, who is not necessarily accountable to the people. The final concern, and probably the biggest concern that we have in this particular case, is the fact that the way in which the bill is worded you could require someone who is an administrator, who's a police chief in a jurisdiction to which you are not a resident, you will have to then go and apply to them. So, for example, I'm a resident of the city of Sacramento. I could have to go to the city of Galt and apply in the city of Galt. I have no real accountability on top of the fact that I have to drive literally half the county away in order to be there. You know, our concern is that this is primarily a due process issue. And I would encourage you to look at the language of the bill, and I think that you'll find that that is specifically the case. We already have 52 elected sheriffs. We have 52 different processes. Do we really want to create an additional patchwork by now including cities and municipalities in this? It's for these and many reasons that we oppose this measure.
All right, additional witnesses in opposition? Okay, I'm going to have a question. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Lackey.
I was just going to make comment that it seems to me that the remarks against this particular bill are very, very difficult for me to understand, and the fact that it does seem like it creates a greater burden on those who are seeking this type of benefit that I believe is protected by the Second Amendment, and I believe it also creates less accountability, so I'll have trouble supporting this thing.
All right. Other comments from members? Okay. I have a question. Would it be true? And if, well, let me just make a comment. If what he said about Sacramento people having to go to Galt, that particular thing, perhaps you could respond to that in your close. And any of the other items that you have with regard to the opposition, in terms of the burden being higher.
Thank you. Then I'll close and take that opportunity. There's no additional burden. This would allow a sheriff to reach an agreement with a local police chief, and then that police chief, who knows their constituents better, knows the citizens in that city much better, in a better position to address moral character. It would not then be a duplicative layer where the city and then the county are going to have to weigh in. This is merely giving the police chief in that city the ability to issue the CCW permit. And the bill, as I read it, was not intended to allow a situation where a sheriff would enter into, as the example prescribes, an agreement with the police chief in Galt, for example, and then all of the citizens of Sacramento be forced to go down to Galt. And that is, and if that's something in there, I'm happy to try and amend it to make sure that that situation doesn't happen, because that is directly antithetical to what we're trying to achieve here. We're trying to give the police chief, the sheriff, the person who has the most experience with that individual who's applying for a CCW to then be able to weigh in on it. So I respectfully disagree that we're creating any additional hurdles, and if there is a thought that a sheriff would, and I don't know why a sheriff would, give a second city the ability to give CCWs for a first city in that circumstance, that just doesn't make any sense. And I can't imagine why that situation would come up. And I don't know why a sheriff would do that, but happy to clarify that in the bill as it moves forward.
One other question. In this bill, it was mentioned that in the case of the city of L.A., if the L.A. police chief were to turn it down, they could appeal to the sheriff. Would that be part of this? Excuse me, this was the case earlier in the court case that came up. Is that the case with this bill, or would the chief have the final say?
No, this would be giving the chief the ability to say yes or no, because they're the ones that have a most direct relationship with the citizens of that city.
Okay, so there wouldn't be an appeal.
Correct.
All right. So I'm recommending an aye for the reasons stated by the author, that the police chief would know best. Also, certainly in a county the size of L.A., I think it's very hard for a sheriff with a county of millions and millions of people to make that determination. So I think particularly in that case it's relevant. So I think that this could actually make it easier to get a concealed carry. So it could make it, you know, and again, the sheriff has the discretion. If he gives his discretion to the chief and he doesn't like what's happening, can he take it back?
That would be between the two parties to arrange how that would happen.
All right. Again, I trust the chiefs and the sheriffs that they've come to a good agreement, so I'm recommending an aye vote. The motion is? Is there a motion? The motion to move the bill. All right. So thank you, Mr. Jones Sawyer. I will second. We will then, what is the motion? Do pass to the floor. Do pass to the floor. Madam Secretary, you may call the roll.
Quirk?
Aye.
Quirk, aye. Melendez? Melendez, no. Gonzalez? Jones Sawyer? Jones Sawyer, aye. Lackey? Lackey, no. Lowe? Santiago? The bill's on call.
The bill is on call. We will keep things open. Do we have any more bill? Oh, my bill comes up next. We will keep the bill open and make sure that we get the other committee members to weigh in.
Item number 25, AB 1134, Stone. Gonzalez? Gonzalez, aye. Lowe? Lowe, aye. Santiago? Santiago, aye. That bill is out. 5-2.